Sonetta TV.
Sonetta TV's growing. Y'all better get this knowledge. The truth be overflowing. It's like a pro-black college. It's for our fallen souls. Malcolm and Brother Khaled. This thing is taking over. The angel is solid.
Sonetta TV.
If it was ever a good time that I could just roll the streets and never hold a beef, if there was ever a bad time, long as we just stick together, we could set a better tone on the streets. I know the TV's right on time. Ain't no masquerades or no network games to play. It be the new pastime. It be the new pastime. If it was ever a good time, but we could just live in peace and didn't kill our peeps. Ain't no more walking around blind. Ain't no stopping, it's the consciousness that dropping, helping people to see.
Peace and Black Power family, you know what it is. This is your brother Sonetta, Black News 102. And we got two powerful giants up in the building right now. We got Zion Lexx, and we also have brother Jabari, who is a priest, a Kemetic priest. And we got our brother Zion Lexx. Don't get him mixed up and confused with all the other Hebrews. He's not that type of Hebrew, all right? He is a Hebrew that follows the Torah.
And I'm known in my community as Chief Moray Zion Lexx. Chief is a leader and Moray means teacher.
Chief Moray Zion Lexx, there you go.
Absolutely.
Okay, so brother, go ahead. You got
all right, so it's been a long time. A long time coming, you know.
Right.
Number one, I want to say that from what I observed about you and your dialogue, I appreciate the spirit that you bring your information in. Sometimes it's extremely hard to have a fruitful dialogue when about 70% of the time is based on contention. A lot of times, individuals who are engaging one another on intellectual ideas that we may embrace or negate, 9 to 10 times we are listening to respond as opposed to just listening.
That's right.
Which is a skill set. I observed that you actually have that skill set, and you definitely put it into play. I've watched you go up against brothers that I consider my brothers, from Captain Tazariak to Divine Prospect. No two of us agree or see the scriptures exactly the same. Nonetheless, they are my brothers. What I've come to learn about my walk and the walk of truth on a whole is that everyone has their vision that they're entitled to perceive about a thing that they're looking into. With that being said, we're not going to act as if there aren't multiple lenses and viewpoints in the Kemetic community either. We know that various teachers hold different views. So when I say that me and my brothers may not share the same views, but they're still my brothers, I'm pointing out a truth that pervades all of these different societies. With that being said, I want to get straight to the point. We only have about 1 hour and 45 minutes. I want to make that clear for the listening audience, so I want to get straight to the point. There was a video that I initially watched where you spoke of the 10 Commandments coming out of the laws of Ma'at, something that has always interested me in terms of having someone who is formidable and trained enough within the language, the culture, and the spiritual system of Kemet to be able to go into that system and make that correlation. I'm going to be extremely meticulous when I restate what you said. You said at least 8 of them, of the 10 Commandments, were taken from Ma'at. So as we open our discourse for the very first time, never met you in person, would you mind sharing your thoughts and just showing, not just myself, but more importantly, those listening, which of the 8 commandments come out of the 42 negative confessions or the Ma'at system, and how did you come to that conclusion?
Peace, family. I just want to go ahead and say peace to the Sonetta family. Black News 102. You know, I am always pleased to be able to sit with you and to chop it up, to talk about critically important issues as we try to understand exactly how we must move forward in power, and in many ways which directions will be best suited to that endeavor. So I just want to start out by saying peace. And let me first say to you that there has been over 100 years of scholarship on ancient Kemet. Some of it I agree with,
Okay.
and some of it I don't.
Okay.
But I will honestly say to you that the initial understanding that the laws that come out of ancient Kemet, particularly those laws that become most popular in the New Kingdom, the 42 negative confessions they're often called. Those particular laws it were actually clear to have greatly influenced or actually been the source for several of the Ten Commandments for quite some time, actually. I think that when individuals began to decipher the Kemetic language and to do more work on finding the texts that end up being very critical in Kemetic theology and even in the Kemetic systems, they finally decided that and understood that there was quite a bit of influence. So let me say to you that I did not look at the 8 commandments and say that they were similar. A number of scholars have. And I think that the first scholar to even notice that is probably E.A. Wallace Budge, who in some ways at the beginning of the field of Egyptology begins to notice the great similarities. And I know that he gets a lot of he certainly gets critiqued in our community, and rightfully so. But I do think that for those who are able to read his work, they'll see that there are some things that he was in some ways uncomfortably honest about with regard to the influence of that ancient Kemet must have had on the Abrahamic traditions, being an earlier source, and then looking at the later sources and seeing that many things were quite similar. So why don't we go ahead, and one of the easiest ways, if you'd actually like to see which ones, is I'll hand you, now I'm not sure which version of the Bible you regularly read. If I hand you a King James version, would you be comfortable?
None of the versions are a problem for me. Because
Okay.
I'm a person that reads, study, and teaches the original language.
Okay, so you wouldn't be uncomfortable with the King James version. Sure. So let's do this to best answer your question. I don't want to spend too much time on it because I'm assuming that you have others as well.
Absolutely.
Here's the King James.
Thank you very much.
Oh, and let's really hope that I have a copy of, I think I do, of at least one of the renderings of the Reyu Pertim Ruengare. Let's see if we can find it easily. And from there, what we can do is we can make some correlation. I also want to be clear that there are several texts that seem to be greatly influenced from ancient Kemet, and it certainly isn't just the main 10 Commandments. I mean, I'd be remiss in attempting to give the audience that impression. And so, even according to the mythos of your Torah, I mean, it's said that Moses, and I want to be clear that I believe that it's been very well established that Moses was a mythological character. I know you may disagree with that. But as we look at that, it should be clear that even in the mythos, it says that Moses spent his time doing what? Prior to coming into prominence, he was learned in the ways of ancient Kemet. So I think that's one of the ways that we're able to detect, understand the influence. And I think that in that period of time, there was no discomfort with saying there was influence because ancient Kemet was seen as one of the most important nations in the world. So, did you find the 10 Commandments?
Yes, I know exactly what it is.
Okay, let's get to it. So why don't you begin with the first one?
I'll read it.
Pass the mic. Let him hit the mic.
I'm sorry.
For clarity, because we also have people in the community that also speak the Hebrew language. So I'm going to read the first commandment in both English as well as Hebrew for clarity for my audience, for my community. The first sentence,
Something different in the both languages?
I'm going to read what the King James says, and then I'm going to read what the original says.
And
And
then
I'm speaking to my audience at
there
this point.
differences?
Yes, there's definitely differences, meaning that King James, as a translator, or the translators that he set up, weren't the best in deciphering the language of the Torah. Number one, it wasn't a language that was akin to them. That's number one. Number two, we have to remember that the King James legacy is part of the slave trade legacy. which we as Hebrews believe that we were enslaved by these people. So with that being said, no one in their right mind would entrust your slave master to give you an interpretation of your spiritual system, which is why we push in our community extremely meticulously that you would want to learn the original language, because when we go into places like Aksum, in Ethiopia or in Nubia, they actually have a Hebrew Torah, and it matches exactly with the Hebrew Torah that we see here today. Now, the English part is where we all differ on, because there's so many different English versions, but no matter where you go around the world, the Hebrew versions remain the same. So with that being said, I want to read for my audience first the Hebrew, and then we can read the English.
That's a quick question. Quick question based on what you just said.
Absolutely.
Did you journey to Aksum to see those texts?
No, I did not, but I will say this.
Okay.
No, I did not, but I will say this. I come directly from what is known as the Rabbi Matthews community. Rabbi Matthews, but more importantly, a person by the name of Rabbi Josiah Ford is a person that helped Marcus Garvey with the UNIA. If you can go to the Schomburg Museum, of which Brother Reggie has, of which Brother Polite has, and they have confirmed these things, you'll see that Rabbi Josiah Ford was the one who wrote the charter for the UNIA. He wrote the charter. He was also the choir leader. And when Garvey, whose son just spoke at our temple 2 days ago, Dr. Julian Garvey, he spoke at our gathering, Rabbi Ford was the one that suggested to Marcus Garvey, with which his son acknowledged last 2 days ago, Sunday, that we were the ones, the Hebrews were the ones that told him that we as a people should not go by the term Negro, colored, or black. In fact, the original name of the congregation that Rabbi Matthews and Rabbi Ford belonged to is the Commandment Keepers Ethiopian Hebrew Congregation. So at that time, Rabbi Ford suggested that Garvey should now supplant or interject the term Ethiopia when he's referring to our people. We as a people, we feel that we have a deep-seated connection to the people of Ethiopia, Hebrews who truly understand Hebrew history. With that being said, I don't want to do too much time, because that can take us a whole nother hour or so, just expounding upon that. But let me get to the actual point, though.
Let me make this point really quickly. I have been to Aksum.
That's great.
That's
great.
Okay, as a backdrop.
That's great. I appreciate field work.
I'll send you some pictures so you can actually see that.
Absolutely.
Okay.
That's great. So the verse reads in the Hebrew, Waidaber Elohim et kal hadebarim ha'elei lemor. And God spoke all these words, saying. Let me move up to the next verse. Anoki Yehovah Eloheka Asher Hutsetika Me Eretz Mitzrayim Mi Beit Avdim. I am the Lord your God who brought you forth out of the land of Egypt, out of the house of bondage. You let me know when you want me to stop, or I'll continue going until we come to the commandment you believe was stolen.
Well, I want you to actually start with the commandments.
Okay. Lo yiyeh leka Elohim achirim al panai. You shall have no other gods before me. I'll read on. Lo ta'ane leka fesel wekal temuna ashir ba shemayim mima'al va'ashir ba'aretz mitachat va'ashir ba'mayim mitachat la'aretz. You shall not make for any graven images, or the likeness of anything that is in the heaven above, the earth beneath, or the water that is under the earth. Lo tishtakwe lahem velo ta'avdem ki anoki Yehovah Eloheka el kwana, the jealous God. Pokwed avon avot al banim al shileshim we al rivim lesonai. You shall not bow down yourself to them, nor shall you serve them, for I, the Lord your God, am a jealous God, visiting the iniquities of the fathers upon the children to the third and fourth generation of them that hate me. Verse 6. We ose chesed la'alafim le'ohovai ul shomrei mitzvotai, and showing mercy to the thousands of them that love me and keep my commandments. Verse 7. Lo tisa et shem Yehovah Eloheka lashaweh, ki lo yanakwe Yehovah et asher yisa et shemo lashaweh. You shall not take the name of the Lord your God in vain, for the Lord will not hold him guiltless who taketh his name in vain. Zakor et Yom HaShabbat le Kadshehu. Remember the Sabbath day to keep it holy. Sheshet Yamim Ta'avod We Asita Kal Melaktika. 6 days shall you labor and do all your work. Yom Hashvi'i Shabbat La Yehovah Eloheka Lo Ta'ase Kal Melaka Ata Uvineka Uviteka Avdeka We Amteka U Behemteka We Georeka Asher Bish Areka. But the 7th day is the Sabbath unto the Lord your God. In it you shall not do any work. You, nor your son, nor your daughter, your manservant, nor your maidservant, nor your cattle, nor your stranger that is within your gates.
Are there significant different? I want to.
Oh, absolutely, absolutely.
You know what I'm
absolutely.
asking?
Yes, there are significant differences. Number one, the first commandment
Between what?
the Hebrew and the English. Because you handed me a King James, and the King
Right.
James will say, "You shall not have any god besides me." The Hebrew does not. Excuse me. The King James says, "You shall not have any god besides me." The Hebrew does not say that. The Hebrew says, "Lo yiyeh Elohim achirim al panai." You shall not have any El before my face. Al panai, before my face. What is the thought implicit with that? The Creator could have simply said, "You shall not have any gods." Period. And then the commandment would have been understood, some people would suggest. But he added the term al panai, before my face, to remind you that I'm watching.
Can I say something?
Absolutely.
For a second? As we go through this, I think that there are some significant things that I'd be remiss not to bring up.
Okay.
And that's even before we begin to talk about the similarities. And I want to just acknowledge that the word you used for God was?
El. There's El and there's Elohim.
And can I ask why you use the word El? Oh, by the way, you can't put things on that table there. That's the shrine table. Can I ask when you say El, you are aware that that is a title of an earlier deity?
I am totally aware that that is not a title of an earlier deity.
You're say that again?
I am totally aware that that is not a title of an earlier deity. Mike to you.
You sure you want to start there?
Take your time.
Are you sure you want to start there?
Take your time, brother.
So are you telling me that the Canaanite people did not actually have worship towards a deity by the name of El?
Are you telling me that the Canaanites are the only ones that spoke of an El? Because we actually find El also in Sumer, and we also find El in Ashur.
Really?
Yes, we do.
Wow. Okay, so
This is why. Let me get to a point. This is why one of the bones that I definitely have to pick with you is in the area that I'm sure you are very trained in, but I don't see you exercise it often. Mm-hmm. This is why comparative study is important and very significant. When we're talking about the Hebrew language, we're not just talking about the Levant. We're not just talking about the Canaanites. We're talking about a language that is actually shared in Mesopotamia, what the Greeks are calling Mesopotamia, but we know that region is not a Greco-Roman land. But that region, Ephrat in Hebrew, composed of a people who spoke many dialects of a singular language family. With that being said, I can easily open up for you a Sumerian dictionary and find terms like Sar, which means prince. In fact, Sargon, the king of Assyria, his surname Sar means prince or king, and it means the same. Hold on 1 second. Allow me to finish the point. Okay. It means king or prince.
I don't know if you
I'll go on so we can do what we call comparative study. When you go into the literature in Sumer as well as Ashur or Assyria, you find that they refer to the sun as Shamash. The Hebrews call the sun Shemesh. When you go into I can do this all day with their language.
But I want to be really clear that in the tradition that you follow, the Hebrew people make a very clear distinction between their spiritual traditions and the spiritual traditions of other peoples that were there earlier than them. In fact, even in your document, even in the Torah, it even talks about how your people, and I'm using that with air quotes, even though I'm not using the air quotes literally, actually should be victorious over those other people, partially because they worship another god. So if those are particular distinctions between those people and the people that you are referencing, the people that you believe are your people, then how could you use the same name? I want to say something to the family here. One of the reasons why folks get away with this kind of sloppy scholarship is because in English, I'm going to tell you why it's sloppy, and I don't mean it to be disrespectful. I don't mean it to be disrespectful, but listen. One of the things that happens is in English, when we talk about the divine force, we often use the word God. God is a Germanic word. There is no language that does not come fraught with culture. There is no language that does not come with the history of a people. But in English, we seem to believe that the word God is a neutral term that describes a divine force. It is not. It comes from a people who have a particular religious and spiritual background, and also people that use a particular language. If you want to distinguish yourself from a group of people, particularly on the basis of a differing spiritual form, using the same name for those deities is problematic. And let me say something else here. And this gets to a major challenge, a major bit of contention that I have with you and some of actually the writings that you've done. Often, Brother Zion Lexx, I see that you collapse literally 3,000 years like they're happening at the same time. And so perhaps your audience is not familiar with an analysis of the nations of the region or the time periods in which they occur in. And so that has been something you've been able to do with other people. But I'm going to tell you that you're sitting with a historian, someone who is a trained historian. And so I want to caution you, because one of the things that he does, particularly in his book, one of the things that he does quite frequently is he actually, where'd I put your book? Here it is. One of the things that he does quite frequently, particularly in Ancient Kemet on Trial, is he collapses the people of Sumer with the Akkadian people, who he really doesn't mention much in the book, but would need to if he's going to use some of the images that he uses and some of the time frames that he does not include. And then he collapses them with the Assyrians, the smaller period of the Chaldeans, and even the Babylonians. Family, that is a period that spans literally over 3,000, and if I really want to go by your dates, which I contest, over 4,000 or 5,000 years. You can't simply say that something that happened 1,000 years earlier is the same as something that happens later. And so when you mention El, you were mentioning an early deity, a deity that in your book is looked upon disdainfully. And those people that worship that deity are looked upon disdainfully. And I think that one of the reasons why folks have gotten away with not having to address this is because they are not familiar with time frames. They're not familiar with how nations developed and how they fall. And they're certainly not familiar with some of the words that we almost think are English words. I mean, I'm even confused at why people call themselves Hebrew Israelites when Israel can be translated as El goes through. You are referencing a pagan, and I only use that word because it's a word that I hear brothers in your community use, because I don't consider myself a pagan. But certainly, when you do that, either you are being sloppy because you're slapping together groups of people that see things very differently, or you are being disingenuous. I would rather say that you're being sloppy than disingenuous. Absolutely. Here you go. Here you go.
So let me say this. Now I'm starting to warm up now. All right. So let me say this. This is something that I do very well. I've heard you say on camera before that you have, and correct me if I'm wrong by speaking into the mic, you have at least 30 years or 30 or more years of training or study in the area that you speak to and profess to be, correct?
That is correct.
Okay. With that being said, I have 25 years. So that means in terms of study, we're definitely in the same ballpark in terms of time invested in, not in terms of content or quality, because I'm sure you would beg to differ. And I'm a meticulous person when I speak, so listen keenly as I say these words to you. I watched you pull out my book, and you referred to it as, a 58-page pamphlet, something that was extremely laughable to me. And you made a number of other accusations and tidbits. And the first thing I want to say to you is something that I said to you via text message, but I want the entire community to hear this. There's a movie by Jean-Claude Van Damme called Bloodsport. Jean-Claude Van Damme was asked to knock out the bottom brick. And this would be a test that he is from the Japanese family that is putting him to be in the Kumite. You guys remember the movie. With that being said, he did the impossible. A European knocked out the bottom brick. The guy who he fights at the end that we know to be Bolo Young, but in the movie he's called Chun-Li, he's not impressed. Why is he not impressed? I'll use his words verbatim. He looked at Jean-Claude Van Damme after knocking out the bottom brick, and he says, "Brick don't hit back." In the spirit of intellectual warfare, I want to say this to you. Whenever you speak about me, absolutely. Whenever you speak about me and I'm not there, it sounds cute. It sounds like you have a point. But I want to remind you, brick don't hit back. It's only when I'm there that you really sound like you know what you're saying. So with that being said, I want to go into this. I have to correct you, because one thing I'm always confident in saying and sure in saying and meticulous in saying is that everyone should feel and understand and know their lane. I understand that you have a deep-seated appreciation for Africana studies with a particular focus in Kemet, Kush, and I'm pretty sure more that you could interject and enlighten me upon in this moment. But with that being said, I also do too. And I also do too. I also have a deep-seated appreciation for Africana studies. My dad is a person that had me deeply immersed in Africana studies. He attended Medgar Evers College here in New York City, and I went to several lectures. In fact, I was able to see John Henry Clark at 8 years old, and that was something I will never forget, because it's the first time I'm seeing another black man speak as powerful as my father always speaks. With that being said, I want to say this to you. I will correct you, because when it comes to Hebrew, you're not the authority in the room, I am. And you said that L means to go through. L goes through. You are absolutely incorrect. Unless you're going to give me a root word, of which I'm a linguist in the community. I'm an etymologist in the community. Not because I say so, but because I went to Touro College and that's what I became. A linguist in the Hebrew language and etymology. So when you say L goes through, I'm looking for something called, let me finish. I'm looking for something called syntax. I'm looking for something called grammar. I'm looking for something that called in Hebrew a binyan, which would represent the 7 ways Hebrew verbs are conjugated, and I heard none of those to establish your point. What I heard was what you said earlier, an air quote. But let me move on. What does it mean? I have no problem telling you that. You know, the Bible is so beautiful. It say that the end of the matter is sweeter than the beginning thereof, if we would only allow people to be heard fully. With that being said, let me say this to you. The term El literally means power in the Hebrew language. And we know power in the Hebrew language to be synonymous with energy, of which when we're speaking about energy, we're speaking about the masculine and the feminine principle. Hence why our Torah says male and female, he created them under his image of Elohim, which is just a title, because there is no name that can describe the creator who is the ineffable one. You cannot approach his essence, is beyond investigation. So when we talk about names, a name seeks to define the essence of the thing that it speaks of. None of us are using enough of our finite brains to grasp that which is beyond infinity. So we deal with titles, of which El is one. And I'll correct you in first saying this. You said God is a Germanic term, which was cute, because it's a layman speaking. The term God is actually Aramaic, Gad. If you look into Marcus Jastro's Aramaic dictionary, of which I will have for you the next time I come. I didn't have it. I didn't expect you to speak as an authority in a language you don't speak, so I didn't bring it. But now that I know that you assume to be an authority in a language you don't speak, the next time we dialogue, I definitely will bring it for you. So in the book entitled Marcus Jastro's Aramaic Dictionary, you'll see references and timelines and chronology that show you that the term Gimel and Dalet, which gives you the G and D sound in the Hebrew language and paradigm, which in the English would be God, was actually used in the land of Israel, in the Levant, to refer to a power outside of the human paradigm. So the term God actually does not originate with the Germanic people. And what I mean by that sounds cute is it's cute for someone who has a limited understanding of a subject matter that is not particularly their lane. I expect you to give me the best of your lane because I'm going to give you 110% of my lane. But I will explain to you, but I will explain to you what God actually does mean, even looking at the English and bringing it back to Hebrew. The Hebrew word for our creator, some people would say, is Yahweh, which is spelled in Hebrew Yod He Vav He. Every single Hebrew letter has what's called a numerical equivalent. So Yod is 10, He is 5, Wav is 6, and He is 5. That would give you 26. What is so significant about that, Zion Lexx? Well, for me, I see a correlation between the English word. So for me, I see a correlation between the Hebrew term Yahweh and the English term God. Why do I see this correlation? Because I'm a person that studies very meticulously. The Hebrew word for Yahweh is numerically equivalent to 26. Let's look at the letter G. It's actually what? The 7th letter of the English alphabet. Let's look at the letter O. It's actually the 15th letter of the English alphabet. Let's look at the letter D. It's actually the 4th letter. So let me, without the brother interrupting me, because I do want to give respect to his home, but we still speaking on a platform. I'm going to bring it to an end right now. So the term Yahweh in Hebrew is numerically equivalent to 26. G is the initial letter in the word God, and it's the 7th letter of the English alphabet. O is the 15th, and D is the 4. My brother, please let me, I want to bring it to, in the English alphabet. In the English alphabet. We're talking about English right now. You can do whatever you want after, but please just allow me to finish. So let me go into it again, because I don't want to be interrupted on the point. The term Yahweh has a numerical equivalency of 26. The term God, the G is 7th letter of the English alphabet, 7th from A. O is the 15th from A, and D would be the 4th. When you add 7, 15, and 4, you have 26. I'm a person that I deal with the abstract nature of things. My specialty in Hebrew thought is actually the esoteric language within the Torah itself, something that my brother on the side would never get to, because everything that he studied so far is from the Germanic perspective.
You have to really have briefer answers, because what happens is when you cover so much, what ends up happening is there's a lot for me to cover, and I'm trying to be respectful. I really am trying to be respectful. But when you give answers that are that long, you actually layer things that are problematic. And I want you to understand that much of what you said is problematic.
That's fine.
And so when you do that, it's hard to actually tease them all out. It'd be better if we were able to address one at a time. Now, in terms of you saying L means power, family, I want you to hear this very clearly. And perhaps even before I go to L, let's go to where he ended. He's giving you the numerical values of words in Hebrew, and then he's comparing them to the numerical values of the words in English. Are we to believe that the people who are using the word God in English, I need you to pay attention to this, and also to the folks that use, okay, wait, listen, and for those who are also composing these words in Hebrew, we're doing them simultaneously. You're talking about two groups of people that do not have considerable interaction in history at the same time. I want you to understand what he just did, because it sounds really good. This brother is really articulate. But the challenge that I will have, I said it sounds really good. This brother is articulate. But the challenge that we have is that there's little substance, because he just compared the numerical value of words in Hebrew to the numerical value of words in English. Do you actually think that the people who are using the term God in English, or began to use it even in Old English, were doing this in a similar time? That they composed those words similarly because of the numerical value? You should by now understand that that's a ludicrous concept, because once again, we're talking about things that transpire thousands of years apart. I talked to you about the early Canaanite people, and he begins to talk about the Hebrew people, and then he shifts and talks to things that happened in Sumer. He is literally smashing thousands of years together. Human history does not occur that way. People who are developing ideas do not sit with each other across thousands of years to develop coherence. So that when I say to you that the word God comes to the Germanic people, brothers and sisters, look it up. Look it up. So that you're clear about how these languages develop. And I know that he has said that he's a linguist, and he's attempted to put himself on a similar stature as I have. But I want you to be really clear that you're dealing with someone who has a degree in Africana studies. I'm not just a person who's read. When you have a degree in Africana studies, what happens is you understand how to interpret documents. You understand how to think. And one of the challenges that I have with much of what I've read of this dear brother, and he is my brother. I don't, just because I'm frustrated with him, I don't want you to get the impression that he's not my brother, is that what he's doing is very poor scholarship. This is not the way that ideas in a scholarly setting are formed. If you are comparing something that took place at 700 BCE, before the Common Era, but something that took place at 4000 BCE, we can barely compare the presidencies of Jimmy Carter to the presidency, and it's hard to say this term, the presidency of Donald Trump. And we're talking about the span of just a few decades. Yet, Brother Zion Lexx wants you to believe that these spans occur very simply when we talk about thousands of years. Let's get back to L. I really hope that Brother Zion Lexx follows me on my tours of the major museums and major collections in the United States, and perhaps he's even interested enough to follow me in the tours of collections around the world, because I do those tours regularly. I've been doing those tours in Kemet. I've been doing those tours in all over the United States, in 5 museums in the United States, and even in London and at the British Museum. So what you'll have to understand is when you look for Canaanite artifacts, you will see that their deity is named El. Is it possible a later people took that word for their God and said this word means power? That is saying to you right off the bat, that these people are actually the same people at different periods trying to reference different things. This is a really interesting point. I'm going to show you in my presentation if we get time to do it, because we're running out of time rapidly.
Could we cut our responses to 5 minutes, where we can just get to the presentation?
I would almost rather get to the presentation. But because I think that in the presentation what you'll see is some of these ideas flushed out. You'll be able to see the slides. You'll see the references. I would rather do that.
Let's do that, but let me make a note and just make a point.
Sure.
I'll try to keep my point under 2 minutes. Let me say this. Everyone that is familiar with my work and what I do, you know that there's a particular word that you know goes and follows me in my study. I'm extremely meticulous. I ask very meticulous questions. In fact, the Hebrew word for wisdom, chakmah, literally means the power to question, because the idea of wisdom is that we question things to gain wisdom. This wisdom brings us, or discernment brings us to a gate of wisdom. With that being said, I began this dialogue by asking our good brother to show us where 8 of the 10 commandments that were taken from the system of Ma'at came from. And I'm meticulous, and I'm asking you...
Still continue on that framework?
Let me just finish the thought.
Okay.
And I'm meticulous. So with that being said, I want you to pay attention that was not answered. He did not show you anywhere in Ma'at where those laws were taken from. And I want you to pay attention to that.
We'll do it then.
There we go.
We'll do it then. The reality is this. Rather than showing you which laws came from where, I would almost, by the way, I want you to also understand a major inconsistency. Brother Zion Lexx would like to think, like us to believe, that the word God in English has the same numerical value as the word God in Hebrew, and that in some way there's some sort of divine or even corollary that occurs. Yet he did not want to read strictly in English the 10 Commandments. And what happens is it eats a lot of time. We could actually look at the similarities. But you know what I really want to do?
Could you at least give us one?
Let me say this. Let me say, well, I mean, obviously there are a number of them. We could talk about thou shalt not kill. We could talk about, but here's the deal. The reason why I don't want to spend as much time on that is because I would rather you actually look at the piece of literature that inflamed this debate.
Okay.
Because I've read his book.
Let me say this though.
And wait.
You led the questions.
You said that you were going to let me respond. So I'd like to respond. Are you interrupting me?
Yes, it is.
You are interrupting me?
Yes, I'm an honest person. I am.
Okay. So then let me say to you that I'd have to allow you to interrupt me, but I'm not going to allow you to interrupt me. So what I want to do is how is it a dialogue if you've agreed that you've interrupted me?
What I'm trying to say to you is that if we're going to have a respectful dialogue, we should be respectful of the idea that you're going to speak as well as I'm going to speak.
But you're interrupting.
Every time I spoke, you interrupted me. And if you notice on camera, I never got mad at you or, as you say, frustrated because you interrupted. So what I would want to ask you as a priest, as an initiate, show some discretion.
Brother Zion.
Control over yourself.
Brother Zion. Brother Zion. That is really cute. You are interrupting and refuse to stop interrupting, and I am the one that's not showing discretion. I want to be really clear here that one of the reasons why you don't know. Let's be clear. Let's be clear. The reason why I am frustrated has to do less with the fact that you've given lengthy answers, because I'm prepared for lengthy answers. Part of the challenge is I know that we have time constraints because Brother Lex arrived 2 hours late and has to leave in an hour and 45 minutes.
40.
And what time were we supposed to meet?
After 5:30.
So that means over 2 hours.
After 5:30 is not
Okay.
the time.
Well, let me say this to you. He has little time. And so I want to really get to the crux of the matter. I don't want to go into speaking languages that the folks at home do not read. Wait, let me finish.
Okay.
Both you and I speak English. Our audience speaks English. I would rather us really get to the crux of the matter. I'm not going to get into numerology. I could. I'm not here as a priest. I'm here as a historian. So the challenge is, I certainly would spend time doing that.
Me to answer to my book, but you've yet to answer to my initial question.
But in some ways, I can do that. But I just gave you one.
You didn't actually.
I'm sorry. What did I say? I said, at least thou shalt not kill. I did say that.
You didn't demonstrate it. You just said.
What do you mean I didn't demonstrate it? Do you want me to read it?
Yeah, show us the correlation.
Brothers and sisters, he is asking me to do something that you can do at home. This is not dialogue. This is not dialogue. What you're asking me, no. This is the deal. This is the deal. What you and I need to do is we need to have a really full discussion of ideas rather than read things out of books. And so that's the challenge. So let's be clear. So I'm going to tell you, I showed you one, and I'm going to show you at least 4 places. We're going to.
You just said thou shalt not kill.
That's possibly because you're still speaking. But let me say to you that one of the negative confessions, there are 2 of them. It says, I have not killed, and it says, I have not ordered to kill. And so the prohibition on murder is the easiest one for us to look for. I want you to understand that when you begin with having jealous gods, that's clearly not something that you would see in ancient Kemet, because they weren't dealing with literalism. And so they understood that they were talking about energy rather than characters. So we started there, and I didn't interrupt you. I could have, because there's some things that are similar, but I didn't think that was the most fertile ground for us to discuss. Okay. What I would rather do, and this is because in our conversation, we agreed that we'd talk about our scholarship. What I'd rather do, you asked me a question as I sat here, I've answered at least one of them. What I'd rather do is spend the limited time that we have talking about his commentary on ancient Kemet. That's what I'd like to do.
And like to go to that next, but I need to respond to what you presented.
Please respond.
Thank you very much.
And let's see. Let's see. Yeah, it is. And please try to make it brief. And we'll try.
I'll try my best to make it very brief. And I'm also going to stop myself in a moment because what the people don't know, and I want to enlighten them on, is that a lot of the people that come on camera that sit down and have discourse, Sarnetta would have us talk and engage before the sit down even occurs. So I've actually
You gotta go.
No. Let me make a point. Sarnetta has actually have us discourse before we engage yourself. So what I mean by that is that I'm watching my brother and myself part from each other, whereas on the phone there was a significant level of respect, even with the differences there, and I don't want to deviate from that. So I'll first begin by apologizing if there's anything that I'm doing that is causing any kind of a friction to you. I want to genuinely say that. Not for the camera cliche. I want to genuinely say that to you as my brother, because that's what you are at the end of the day, period.
I appreciate it.
So let me say this, though. You said that, the commandment, thou shalt not kill, came from the negative confession that you just read. So let me just make two statements with regard to that. Whenever we look at the 42 negative confessions, and we're calling this a legal code that is said to come from Ma'at, a divine feminine deity in Kemet, I have an issue with that. And here is my issue with that. I'm meticulous, Brother Jabari. I'm very meticulous. I'm a person that before I open my mouth to speak, I listen keenly and carefully. Before I begin to say that I found my point, I unravel and I unravel. What do I mean by that? When we're looking at the 42 negative confessions, we're not looking at a legal code.
If you don't mind.
Yes, sorry, I apologize. When we're looking at the 42 negative confessions, we're not looking at a legal code. Zion lexx, enlighten us. What are you talking about? Very, very simple. To say, have not I cursed the gods, I have not cursed the gods. I have not robbed my brother. I have not taken food from the gods. There's something that people are not paying attention to that meticulous minds are paying attention to. This is a confession from the human being speaking to these divine deities about what they have not done against the legal code. But we still have not seen the original legal code. Let me say it again because I'm sure people miss it. The 42 negative confessions cannot represent the original legal code because I have a degree in law from John Jay, so I understand what's called third-party testimony. The 42 negative confessions is a person saying, I have not violated the code. Where is the original code from the deity instructing the human being that says, you shall not do this, you shall not do this, and you shall not do that? The individual saying that they have not done it didn't just wake up one day and get that thought in mind. It came to them from the deity they speak of. So what we ask those who think meticulously is, where is the original legal code from the deity to the individual, the human being, the man or the woman, letting them know that they are not to do this? That's number one. People don't pay attention. I actually do. Number two, the Hebrews make a stark difference between kill and murder, because we kill to eat. Even those that are vegetarians, you are ending the life of that plant. In order for you, that's the bottom line. You are ending the life of that plant in order to consume the rich nutrients from it, of which my dad is a vegan. With that being said, let me stay in my lane right now. So let me say this.
I've enjoyed it.
Let me say this. From the legal code in Kemet to the legal code in the Torah, one of the main contrasting major differences, we have an original legal code spoken from the deity to the people, not third-party confessions to a legal code we still haven't seen. Unless you're going to show me in Kemet the legal code presented without a man saying that I have not violated, show me where Ma'at is administering these laws, then I put more respect.
Brother Zion lexx, that was one of the most ridiculous things that I've heard. You're saying that the challenge, and wait, I have to address this because he spent more than 2 minutes on something that I think is a little embarrassing
For you.
And let me say to you first that we're still brothers. I mean, I can get frustrated at you, and you can still be my brother. No. But I want you to understand that. Yeah, that's because you're the one that has to leave. So that's why you're not frustrated. I'm frustrated because I waited here for a long time, and I was expecting we'd really be able to massage these issues, and I'm understanding that we're truncated. So I am frustrated.
Would you agree?
But I want to say,
definitely do a 3-hour. Or maybe 4 hour.
Well, I don't know if Sunday? I don't know if the time. Well, I have a funeral to attend on Sunday, so that may not be possible. But let me say to you that I really want to let you know that even if I'm frustrated with you, you are still my brother, and I still love you. The folks at home don't know that we even share a nationality. I mean, your family comes from Guyana. My mother comes from Guyana. Both of our mothers come from Guyana. So this is not a situation where I am frustrated to the point where I don't believe he's my brother. That I want you to understand that. And so if you feel that I treated you that way in any way, I want to make sure that that anything that I did made you feel that I did not feel that way about you, then I apologize, because I really want to be clear that that's not what's happening. I want to also acknowledge that now you have rendered the law of your deity as a legal code. Absolutely. A law is something that is pursued in a court. And so I want you to understand that what we're talking about divine laws. And were you more familiar with Kemetic spirituality, you would understand that the 42 laws that you're reading are actually spoken by someone who is standing before scales, who is actually saying, I have not. But in actuality, in practice, what happens is, and this is something I'm sharing with the family, you may not be familiar with this, an adherent to Kemetic spirituality begins the day saying, I will not, in front of Ma'at. At the end of the day, they say, I have not. So this is not really something that just occurs when someone dies. It must occur daily. So the distinction of saying one is a legal code, whether it's third person or first person or second person, is something that I think is immaterial here. But I do want to respond to your question really quickly and then move on. Thank you. Because I don't want folks to believe that I have a problem responding. But if you look quickly, you see thou shalt not kill. You see thou shalt not commit adultery. You see thou shalt not steal. You will see thou shalt not bear false witness against thy neighbor. Thou shalt not cover thy neighbor's house. You have to understand that all of those are admonishments that come initially from the 42 laws. We have here, I shall not cheat in the fields. We have, I already told you that we have at least 2 against pain. In terms of adultery, let me see if I can find the one against adultery very easily. There's 2 of them. Yeah, and I'm not even sure. And you know the funny thing? It's here twice. Here it is. O fiend who comes from the slaughterhouse, I have not committed adultery. So I want you to understand that when I say that 8 of them come from the laws of the 42, first of all, you have to understand that this is not something that I have said. There are a myriad of scholars that recognize, and they may not say that they come directly from, they'll say that there are similarities, but you have to understand that this is much older. The text that comes from ancient Kemet is far older. And so that's really where I want to go. I don't want to go into third person, first person, law. It's interesting that we usually call them the laws, because in many ways, you even see the archetype of the legal system represented when one goes to have their scales. One goes to the scales. We see that the Western world has been influenced. Understand, I'm talking about a time frame, something that I think Brother Zion Lexx doesn't always do as clearly. They were greatly influenced. So you see Ma'at. By the way, he mentioned that she was a lady, and I'm not exactly sure why that was necessary, and I'm hoping that he'll clarify that. But yes, we're talking about a divine intert, a divine being who is feminine. And in this instance, you mentioned it, and it sounded a little strange to me. So I'm glad that you've clarified.
My audience, and let me just say this in this instant, right? I want to take the time to say this. Right.
Please be very quick
Thank you
because
very
I'm still
much.
answering.
I apologize. When I began by reading the Ten Commandments in the Hebrew is because much of my audience is unfamiliar with this community. So when I begin to say things on things that I have already said during this discourse is because I'm speaking to a community that is almost totally unfamiliar with this cultural system. So when I speak about Ma'at and I'm speaking to my community who are watching, I have to pronounce, if you will, for them that this is a divine feminine deity. I want to do that. Not that there's an issue at all, by the way.
Okay, okay. I'm glad that you clarified that. But I do want to say to you that as we talk about these laws, they are of critical importance. And you actually will see, yeah, that's the altar space. So actually what you'll note is that if you look at the earlier text, you'll see where there's a progression of these divine characters. I was mentioning how they're the archetype for law. You see Ma'at, the lady that holds the scales. And if you go to any courtroom in the United States or in fact around the world, you usually see the Lady Justice. She's blindfolded in this instance, which perhaps is a problem. That's the reason why we're not getting enough justice. But Ma'at is not blindfolded, and she holds the scales. And you also see those neteru that serve almost as the jurors that can impeach someone. And so it's interesting that you said that you're talking about laws in your instance, but not laws in my instance, when the very archetype of the legal system is based on the law of Ma'at.
My contrasting difference was not to suggest that Kemet does not have laws, and we have laws and you don't have laws.
Sure, please.
Absolutely not. I've actually done a considerable amount of study into Kemet's spiritual system known as Ma'at. Enough to understand that they are certainly divine laws. I have some issues with the point of origin of them because I did hear you on camera say that Kemet's oldest book is the Maxims of Ptah-hotep, from which we can see the very first pronunciation, if you will, for lack of a better term, Ma'at being present, manifested in terms of laws. So what the all right, so let me say this then. Let me say this. You are on book saying, you are on camera. I remind you, you are on camera, right? Saying that the Maxims of Ptah-hotep is the oldest book of Kemet.
No, that's not what I said. I said the Maxims of Ptah-hotep. I said this literally. I've said this literally hundreds of times, and I actually lead a tour to his tomb and to the museum in which. But I want to be clear. You can show that, but let me be clear for the family. What I said is that the Maxims of Ptah-hotep are the world's oldest complete book. That's what I said. There are many older inscriptions that describe Ma'at that come before the Maxims of Ptah-hotep, and so I want you to be clear. The Merkuti text should be something that would come earlier. Yes, and you have to understand.
That is absolutely incorrect.
Are you sure you want to go there? You have to understand. You have wait. Let me finish. Let me finish though. One of the things that he is doing is you have to recognize that I will not be limited to the time. I will not be. You should probably not play that while I'm talking because that would be a problem. But I want to say to you that I could show you lots of times I've said. I say it all the time. I routinely say it. I have taken over 3,000 people to the tomb of Ptah-hotep. I actually wrote a book that references Ptah-hotep. I actually go to the museum, the Imhotep Museum in Saqqara, the area that's called Saqqara, that shows you his artifacts. Yeah, sure. So please understand that I'm very clear about what I said. It is not the earliest literary description of how to live Ma'at, but it is the world's earliest complete book. Now, with regard to understanding the origins, one of the problems that you're going to see, one of the challenges that you're going to see with ancient Kemetic texts, and I'm talking as someone who studied them for 3 decades, is that what we have is essentially descriptions of ceremonies. They're not exactly the descriptions. I think you might find this interesting, not as a point of debate, but just to it. Yeah. But I think that what you see is you're essentially looking at ceremony. So if you're seeing the description of a ceremony that references something, you have to understand that someone had to put together the ceremony before the ceremony was written down. How do they have a description of Ma'at or Ast or Asar, or for those of you who may be more familiar with these names, Isis or Osiris, those are the Greek names, in the Merkuti text, in a ceremony, if they already weren't talking about Ast and Asar. So wait. This is not conjecture. Because if it's a ceremony, hold on a second. If it's a ceremony, then you have to know that there's an earlier mythos. If you see images of those divine characters that are much earlier, then you know that there is a description of these individuals. That is not just common sense. It's what philologists would say, it's what historians say, it's what archaeologists say. And so I don't want you to think that those are simply my ideas. Most of what I'm giving to you, family, I could go into conjecture. I'm a priest. I could actually go into conjecture and tell you what I think. In these discussions that you're seeing in front of this audience, in front of Sa Neter's wonderful audience, I am wearing my historian hat primarily. And so you need to understand that that is not conjecture, that there must have been an underlying mythos if you're seeing simply ceremonies. That's just how history works.
Let me get y'all. You want to show that first, Zion?
Yes, please.
Yeah.
Let me do that.
And now I got a question too. I have a question.
Show it. I mean,
Being that the people can hear through the mic. It's just all they really need is the audio.
No, because he got it on his phone.
Yes. So I want to play just one thing. I was going to play where our brother Jabari spoke. Yes.
Okay.
I wanted to play what the brother Jabari said about Ptahhotep being the oldest, which is this marker here. Let me do that. So, is there something you're afraid of?
Not at all.
Because it's only 30 seconds long.
You're talking about a YouTube video, so literally thousands of people have seen it.
Right. But I want my audience to see it. Is that a problem?
Then you should probably give them the link. But
come on, my brother. You seem as if you have something to hide.
No,
I'm sorry, you do.
Let me.
It's 30 seconds.
Let me say one thing.
My rebuttal is longer than 30 seconds. You know that. You know that.
Let me say something that will
just let the 30 seconds rip.
Let me say something.
No, it's not fair, Sa Neter. It's not fair because you handed me the mic and you asked me to do it.
No, I handed you one thing.
And you're doing something else.
All right, so I'll play the maxims of Ptahhotep.
There you go.
That's fair.
That's what I'm.
All right, that's fair.
Right here, because a lot of the Hebrew Israelites, for some strange reason, they always go back to their laws, and they always say we got laws as if Kemet didn't have rules and laws. When in actuality, we have to understand that the Kemetic people are those people that first gave people principles to live by. The world's oldest book, the Maxims of Ptahhotep, has 37 maxims on how to live a monarchical life. Now, you said to me, are there principles other than Ma'at?
Oh, wow. No, you said, wait a minute, folks.
Hold on, let's
stop this.
I don't think that's
he's just
all right. Actually, that's very wrong, and it's very unfair of you to do that. No. We're not going to do that. 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 First of all, we have to have Sa Neter act as the moderator and not the interjector. But what you're not going to do is escape the fact that you said on video it's the oldest book when your wife and yourself said it's the oldest complete book. There's a difference.
No.
There's actually a difference.
Wait. No. Don't do that.
That's not a book.
No, it isn't. But don't do that. Don't do that. Because here's
I've heard Dr. Ben refer to the pyramid text as a book in stone.
Wait.
So that's where I'm coming from.
Wait a minute.
That's where I'm coming from.
Wait a minute.
All right, go ahead.
Here is the problem. Let me respond to what you just said.
I actually wasn't finished. That's why I thought it was wrong.
That's why I'm
because
saying
the video didn't play out.
Running out.
Why am I running out the clock?
Because you said to me.
You've said nothing impressive so far.
Folks, listen.
Why would I run the clock?
All
right, I'll give you the mic.
Thank you.
I listen very well.
All you have to do, family, if you choose to, is play back. In fact, Sa could even put it in the video. Play back to when he thought that he was impeaching my commentary by saying that I said that the Maxims of Ptahhotep was Kemet's oldest book. That's not what I said. I said it was the world's oldest complete book. Now, if I did not say complete in that piece, you want to but you have to understand that I'm making a commentary about the global community rather than simply Kemet.
Even your commentary
and so you have to.
This book, and I could prove it right now.
Listen. One of the things that we can do. No, wait. Sa, listen. This is a slippery slope. And I want to say really clearly to the family, there is a reason why we're doing this. He knows that he has a limited amount of time.
Right.
We have presentations. He arrived. Listen, wait a minute. And he's really in. This is what is called a clinical interruption. Is what this brother is doing right now. You have to understand, family. Would you call that a? Would you? But wait a minute.
Don't be unfair.
But listen.
Let me get the mic.
What am I doing?
You've been interrupting me several times, of which I didn't have a problem, but you got frustrated.
Let me ask the
and
question.
you're on camera.
This is amazing.
You said the oldest book was.
This is amazing.
All right, now here's the question I have for both of y'all, man. Because this is what y'all supposed to have been talking about. The origin of black civilization. That's what I want you to talk about. The origin and the root of black civilization. Where does it start?
Let him go straight to his PowerPoint. He said he wanted to go to the PowerPoint. Let him go straight to his PowerPoint and demonstrate it. I'm going to demonstrate it on my PowerPoint. Let him go to the PowerPoint because of the time.
Okay, go to the PowerPoint. Yes.
Go, let him.
Yours is on the screen. Go ahead.
But I'm counter rebutting your claim. I didn't make the claim, you did. So I'm not going to go first.
Which claim?
The claim that you made on camera that the Maxims of Ptah is the oldest book.
Did you think that's what we were discussing?
That's what we came to discuss. The oldest
came to
civilization.
discuss what?
The oldest civilization is what we came to discuss. You took the position on the camera that Kemet was the oldest in writing on paper, something that you didn't allow me to finish in the video. That's what I'm saying. So being that you're taking the accusative, you go first, not me.
This is part of the challenge. First of all, I want you to understand that the topic you're interrupting. You're interrupting. Listen, hold on, you're interrupting. Let me just be clear. The topic was not set by me. The topic was not set by Zion. The topic was set by Netter. So there is no, let me finish. Can I finish? Can I finish? Can I finish? Are you going to let me finish?
Because you're making a statement that's untrue.
Listen.
That topic was not
I didn't set the topic. Did you set the topic?
Yes, we came together and said that we should talk about the origin of civilization while Netter was on the phone. And that dialogue was supposed to happen before today.
Let me say something. Let me say something really clearly. I don't recall. It's possible I don't recall. So I'm not going to tell you that you're lying, because it's possible. It's possible. Let me just do this. No. And you haven't. That's the reason why I'm giving you some room here, because I don't think he would do that. So let me say this to you. But let me say this to you. I'm absolutely prepared to discuss that. But I want you to understand that the real reason why I even wanted to talk to Zion Lexx is because, and this is what Brother Zion Lexx is really not comfortable discussing. I want to discuss the book that he wrote. He even began this conversation by saying that he watched me on video talk about his book and that he thought that was curious. Now, I know Zion Lexx believes that this book, which is called Kemet on Trial, should be framed in some sort of legalistic framework. But I think that he doesn't understand what a trial is, because if he didn't want to talk about that, what he did is he just opened it up for conversation by saying that it was one of his motivators. He allowed us to discuss it if he didn't think that we were going to discuss it. And so the challenge that I have, the reason why I wanted to sit with this brother, who is my brother. I'm not just saying he's a brother. He's my brother. He's literally my brother. And I respect his demeanor. I respect the fact that he has done as much research as he has. So I want you to be clear about that. But I want to be corrective in some way as someone who is a trained scholar. I want to be corrective and say that if you write a book called Kemet on Trial, and you're sitting with a Kemetic historian, an ancient African historian, but with focus on Kemet, and you're sitting with a Kemetic priest, and everyone at home knows that those are the two communities we come from, and they're prepared to hear that conversation, I really think that you should hear more about this booklet that he wrote. And one of the reasons why I think it's important is because he attempts to describe where the origin of civilization is in his book. And I think that the challenge, there's so many challenges with this. First of all, as I said, I said it was a 58-page book. I was being generous. It's more like a 54-page book. It's a 54-page book with not one citation. It's a 54-page book with plagiarized images.
Could you define citation so that when I rebuttal, I could be...
I don't even know how I have to define a citation. Everyone in the world knows what a citation is. And if you're unclear about what a citation is, look at the 20 pages of citation in my book. So what I want you to do is, what I want you to do is I'm not emotional right now. What I want you to understand is a citation, wait. I'm not being emotional. A citation, come on, your interruptions sound really emotional. So if you're looking at, would you like to go into your presentation?
What I would like to do is give you the credit of going into what you said you really came to discuss, which is my book.
The reason why,
can I finish? Please?
The reason there's a reason why I had the mic, because I wasn't actually finished
in that instant just now. So can I at least have a little time to just
yes, you can.
That point?
I'll do that.
My apologies to you. Let me say this. You wanted to have this dialogue.
Nobody can interrupt.
I agree, but let me finish. I agree, but let me finish my point.
Okay.
It's unfair to the presentation that I have, and whatever presentation that our good brother Jabari has, to cram it before 9:45, with now the time being 9:07. I can certainly throw up at least 10 if we can curtail it before 10 slides. Before 9:45, if we could both be done, I don't have a problem with that. But I want to give this brother the credit and deal with my book, because he seems to have the notion that somehow I'm afraid of going into the book, which I'm not sure if he's seen my dialogue with Garfield. I don't have a problem going into the book at all. But let me say this in rebutting to the comment I walked in your home saying I thought was cute and a little tedious of you to make. Brother Jabari, in referring to my book, he says that it was a pamphlet. And then he begins to give you
I think it's what I use.
a pamphlet as well as booklet.
Okay.
All right, which are still synonymous either way. So I'm not sure what we're doing now. But he said that when he looked at my book, the 58 long page book, and he realized that it was a pamphlet, I said to myself, this was interesting, because I heard our good brother speak very high of Dr. Ben, of which I have several of his booklets and pamphlets. And you came across on camera as if a book having 58 pages or less, or under 100, somehow diminish the scholarship, when the idea of true wisdom is we say less because less is more. We say less because the cornerstone and the hallmark of conveying intelligent ideas is saying less and still conveying great. So although my book is 58 pages long, that did not diminish the wisdom that I shared therein. That's still up for you to demonstrate. But we're going to do what you did, and I'm going to call it petty in this instance. So here's what I devised, because I do illustrations. Here's a copy of Dr. Ben's pamphlets, a chronology of the Bible, written in 1991, which is 24 pages long. According to his logic, I would at least be 2 times the scholar of Dr. Ben. The Myth of Genesis and Exodus, written in 1996, is 74 pages long. According to his logic, Dr. Ben is still my peer. So let's get this straight. And this is something that I said to the dear brother to my right, who is still my brother, regardless of the fact that when you engage, there's always going to be a little blood sport. But at the end of the day, I know he genuinely means it, because I sensed his spirit. I'm not watching what I'm seeing now, and I hope that you're not watching what you're seeing now. At the end of the day, I know he's genuine, and I hope he understands that I'm genuine. But I want to say this to the crowd again. Jabari, you must understand, when you're speaking about me, you're speaking about somebody you have never met before. And as we continue to dialogue, you're going to soon learn that you would possibly never meet someone quite like me ever in your life. With that being said, I want to remind you of what I walked in here saying. You sounded cute on camera, speaking in a demeaning way towards my scholarship and the efforts that I showed in my book. And to the onlooking audience, that was powerful. Brother Jabari's great. Let me remind you, brick don't hit back. I was not there. So anyone sounds great. Floyd Mayweather's about to fight Conor McGregor. We could watch him in the gym tear up some stuff, but Floyd Mayweather's not there to tap his ass. Excuse my language.
I just want to be clear that when he mentions Dr. Ben, he's talking about someone he holds in reverence, and you know that I hold him in the highest reverence. Dr. Ben and Dr. Clark, we mentioned, were my teachers. They both taught at Cornell University, where I attended. They actually had retired. I don't want him to think that I'm saying that they were in the classroom. I had to bring them up because he's going to think that I'm misrepresenting this. I had to bring them up to be able to maintain my relationship with them. And if you look at the ceremony that was given to Dr. Ben shortly before his passing, you're not going to see me, but you're going to see my queen. The reason why you don't see me is because I'm the one holding the camera. So you need to understand that I hold both of them in high regard. Now, having said that,
Yeah, I noticed that.
I want to say, I want to say to you that Dr. Ben would call those booklets as well.
Okay.
And the reason why I'm saying that is because when I asked to get them, when I was in his home, he said he would give me a book. And so I said to him, well, there's this really large book. And he said he wasn't willing to give me a large one. So I said, well, why don't you give me 3 or 4 of the smaller ones? He said, those are booklets. Get to the large ones, and I'll give you one of them. In actuality, Dr. Ben was hilarious. He didn't give me any of them. But you need to understand that he would have called them that too. But I want you to be clear that it's possible to have a very strong text in a few very short number of pages. But I want to be clear, the reason why I was being clear is that this is not a strong text. I said to you that it was 54 pages. It has no citations. Scholars, there is not one citation. And in fact, and if this is not an impeachable offense, I don't know what is. I only looked at one of the pictures and researched it. I'm sure that if I looked at many of the pictures, I would find something similar. And this is possibly Brother Zion wasn't aware that this is a problem, but I want you to be clear that it is a real problem. I believe that you may actually owe the End Times blog royalties because several portions of this book were taken, at least one picture, and I really could look at the other pictures. That's not what I was trying to do, but I want to be clear that this picture here comes from a blog. It is not cited. He took it directly from someone else's work. So I don't want to give you the impression that the number of pages is my primary issue. It's part of the issue, but when you write a book and you try to impeach a culture that lasts in its formal stages over 3 millennia, it is impossible to do that in this few pages. As someone who was a published author, who expected my book, and Anika will tell you this, was initially going to be 70 pages. And then 140 pages, and realized that I could not massage those issues in a way that was powerful in less than what I did. I'm telling you that you cannot deal with this subject matter in 54 pages. You can only do that if you're going to give ideas and not give any resources, not give any sources, not give anything that builds upon or justifies your ideas. Now, I want to be really clear. One of the words in the title is trial. Perhaps my good brother does not know what a trial is. A trial is when a party goes before a party of honor and delivers resources, gives facts, shows, proves. And this book with no citations is not that. This book with plagiarized, and I want to assume that there's more than one that's plagiarized. But with plagiarized picture, I'm going to just say picture to be fair to him. With a plagiarized picture, I'm sure there are probably others. Because if you did it once, you probably did it several times. And I know, and so, well, let's be really clear. We're not talking about strictly a legal term. We're talking, wait a minute. If you are sharing ideas that are someone else's and you are not giving them credit, that is what scholars call plagiarism. I'm not talking about legal in the legal tradition. I said to you, I'm a scholar. And so this is plagiarism. When I read the book, part of me was offended that he thought that he could deal with a tradition so important to our people, not my people, our people, in this manner. And in addition to that, part of me also said, and this is the part that, you have those two sides, part of me said, maybe I shouldn't sit down with this brother. Because if this is his idea of scholarship, how do we really begin to find positions that we can agree on if we're not going to even utilize sources? That's a problem. If you're going to have a debate, and I'm a trained Lincoln Douglas debater, if you're going to have a debate, you have to give sources, not just your ideas. But if you know that, why did you write this? Maybe it's because you wrote it under a different name.
Also getting to a point where you're also going extremely lengthy.
Here.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much.
Real quick.
Hold on. Let me.
No, I'm going to say this real quick and you're going to go on.
Unless you're, hold on, time out. Unless you're, hold on. I have to say this because there's a trend with Sonetta.
Yeah.
Unless you're going to do this way.
All right, good.
Thank you very much. He's almost don't want me to use the book. No, it's just your book, man, to do whatever you want with it. You bought it. Since the controversies, let me say this. One thing that I've enjoyed about those who have chosen to buy my book for the purpose of degrading my scholarship, I've enjoyed the fact that you've taken this book beyond scores that my other books have reached. So I thank you first and foremost for that. One thing that we know in the book world, and I'm a person that has my books in Barnes & Nobles, one thing we know in the book world is that controversy adds sales. So I thank you very much to adding to the controversy, because I'm sure even your listening audiences are listening in. So thank you very much, because controversy with this book definitely added to the sales, and I thank you for joining in on that. The second thing I want to say is this. I want to go straight ahead to your point. The very first point he made, of which I asked if he would give us a definition, that way when I present the legal definition, he wouldn't have a problem with it. I was trying to be fair, but I guess I'll just do it this way. He said that I have no citation. So first thing, what we're going to do, because I do believe in doing things a collegiate way, of which I'm sure he's going to say, no, your book is not collegiate. But let me do this. Here we go. Zion Lexx, you have no citations in your book. So I asked him, could you define for a citation? And he seems to throw out something that's, again, demeaning, as if I don't understand what citation is. So here we go. Citation is a quotation from or reference to a book, paper, or author. That's a citation. So if you made a reference to a book, a paper that was written, or the author from which the work came from, you gave a citation. So now that we have citation demonstrated, let me now open up to the very, very first chapter, which is something that should have stood out because it's the very, very first chapter. How do you say my book has no quotations or citations? Excuse me. Hold on. My brother, please, come on.
What word did you just
Come on. Let me be meticulous. The brother said my book has no citations, to which I had to say, did you get fast the first 2 pages? Because we're going to read now from page 2,
Okay.
where I quote myself and say, Petrie, among several other Egyptologists, are very perplexed, not just about the sudden emergence of Egyptian civilization, but also its language. From the point of view of archaeology, Egypt seems to literally burst into emergence as an advanced civilization, without any record of how their civilization developed and became so advanced. This poses a very serious question and even a red flag for Egyptologists as well as archaeologists. Flinders Petrie is so bothered by this that he begins to question every piece of evidence regarding Egypt's supposed origin and compares it with archaeological data he discovers, and what he uncovered caused quite a stir in the realm of archaeology and history, and led to him introducing what is known as the dynastic race theory. Now, the proponent of the dynastic race theory is Sir Flinders Petrie. He is the author and proponent of the dynastic race theory. I'm citing the author. We just read the definition right here. And what we're doing now is we're acting as if I did not cite. So now, because I clearly showed the citation without, telling everything about what's going on here, let me yes, absolutely, it's your book. Yes. Without me getting more developed, let me just say this, because some comments arose. There's also no dates. We just read the definition of citation. If you cite an author, the work of the author, a paper, you have made a citation. Now, what he could have, I want to be sure if I'm debating one person or two. And I mean that with love. And I mean that with love, because that's a beautiful woman. That's a beautiful woman. Let me say this. What you should have done, which is the correct way to do it, is you could have said that he had poor citation. Because then that is a claim that I made myself, because I'm honorable. And I agreed that my book had poor citation because this book was based on a PowerPoint presentation that I decided to turn into a book because I never got a chance to present this PowerPoint at Sarnetta's lecture entitled Ancient Kemet on Trial, hence the book's name. So that's why the book is poorly cited. And I owned up, I'm not done, brother, and I owned up to that. So what you should have done, because it's honest scholarship, is to say that Zion Lex had poor citation, but to say passionately, authoritatively, in an arrogating tone, as if he's arrogating to the audience an absolute truth, which is an absolute lie, because I do have a citation, but he's telling the audience I don't have a citation. When we just read the dictionary definition of a citation is to cite the work of the author himself, or the book. I cited the author and his theory. That's citation number 1 in the first 2 pages of the first chapter. You could have said Zion Lex, and I would have totally accepted it. What you did was poor citation.
You're being redundant now. No, wait. First of all, you need to. I don't see how we're going to do his presentation, but I want to be really clear, family. I want to be really clear that I don't believe that this brother did this intentionally. Because listen to what he said here. I don't think he did it intentionally. But I want you to be really clear that what he just told you, that is not a citation. And even according to his definition, you can't just say someone said this. What you have to do is you have to say where they said it. And the reason why I interrupted and said quotation, and the reason why he didn't want me to interrupt is because he recognizes that there was no quotation. That would have been an even stronger citation. He did not do that. He simply said, this is Petrie's idea. That's what he did. And so you have to understand that is not how this works. Brother, listen, how the field of scholarship works. Listen to me. No, I'm not. Listen. Brother Sa, what I'm saying to you is that what he did, it actually violates every fundamental principle of scholarship. And there's almost no one in your listening audience that isn't familiar with that would realize that. And I wonder if he got a copyright, because then that would also, there's some legal issues here. I'm not going to address it. There's some legal issues here. And what will happen is the people who own these things could claim that and family, you can't read all that he did. I can tell you that he makes a lot of assertions without any sources. That's really what I'm talking about. What he just did with Petrie is some of the best work that he did. And it's still not according to snuff. That's not how you do this. That's not how you do this. And so I want you to be really clear. Just look at this, family. You don't even have to see the book. Do you see the table here that has Osiris as Nimrod, Horus as Tammuz, and Set as Shem? I will show you where it comes from. In fact, I contacted the author of the blog. And the author of the blog said that he has not given anyone permission to use his tables. Let me finish. And then he asked me if I would tell him who gave him that, and I said I would not, because what I'm not trying to get him in trouble, but I want you to understand, I will not tell him that. My goal is not to get him in trouble, but what I wanted to do, you're interrupting. What I wanted, he's interrupting. What I'm telling you is, the reason why I called the author is because I wanted to see if he had poor citation. Because perhaps if the author had given him permission to use it, but he didn't include it in his book, that would be an issue. Right? Because when you cite someone and use someone else's work, you have to say where it comes from and who developed it. That is the standard that every scholar on the planet uses. If you are not doing that, there are many issues, and some of them, yes, are legal. So I didn't want to involve him in legal issues. That would not have been right. But I want you to wait. But I want you to hear that if he had spoken to the author and said, I have permission, I would say, well, it was poorly cited. But the fact that the author did not give anyone permission means that is plagiarism. And now I'm going to allow you to respond.
Okay. Thank you very much for allowing me to respond. Let me hold the book again. So the first thing that I'm going to address is not what I really want to address. I'm going to only address two things, and I'm going to try to be under 3 minutes because we want to get a little bit more in of what we're trying to do here. So here we. You definitely didn't speak under a minute, brother. It was much longer than a minute. Just so you know.
So let's
the length. Let me go, please.
Okay.
So let me say this. You contacted the author. And what you've shown so far is that one image, and you showed some other images, but you named a website that you got one image from, without pointing out whether or not the image is what we call legally public domain. And all you would have had to done, instead of doing what I'm going to now be very poised in saying, is the agent-like thing of saying that I'm going to call the author, the owner, and I'm going to see if the brother plagiarized. Among a couple of things I definitely have some problems with, the poor use of what he's talking about. He says he's a scholar. He actually boasts of being a scholar. But anyone who knows legal language, you know that he's been misusing terms all night when he's spoken legally. When you're talking about an image, you're not talking about plagiarism. You're talking about copyright infringement. That's number one. I have the degree from John Jay, not you. Number two, when you're talking about plagiarism and you're pointing towards Flinders Petrie citation that I gave.
No, I didn't point to that.
Hold on, my brother, because allow me to finish.
Okay.
I pointed to Flinders Petrie citation that I made, that I showed in my book, and then you bring it to an image. That image had nothing to do with Flinders Petrie's citation, but you so cleverly, as Brother Garfield did on camera, you so cleverly passed off an image that had nothing to do with the citation that I made, as if the image is based on that citation, which was totally incorrect. So you did a horrible job at that. And the last thing that I want to touch on is this. When we get to a point in our community where there's contention on scholastic works that we produce, the brother called me in so many ways tonight, his brother. Don't you know that, and I want to look you in your eye because you're a man, and I want to look you in your eye as an equal man.
Okay.
Don't you know that as your brother, if I encountered your work and I felt that there was something scholastically unfounded in your work, the first person I would approach about that is you, not anyone else. If I thought that there was plagiarism in your work, the first person that I would speak to about that is you, because you're my brother. I would go to my brother first before I go to any outside source, because you are first my brother. That is the reason why I call it agent-like without necessarily calling you an agent. I don't think you're an agent, but I'm classifying the behavior as agent-like because I don't like terms thrown around as brother if we're not going to behave as such. Again, and maybe I could rebuttal too. Jabari, as my brother, just told us that he came across some information in my book that he felt was plagiarized, and he contacted the author. All right, so I apologize. I am redundant when I speak. I apologize for that. The problem that I have with that, Jabari, is the fact that you've thrown around the term brother all night. And the first thing that we know as brothers is that when your brother does something wrong, we do something that's called, we pull our brother's coattail. We tell our brother first. So if there's an issue with our brother, we first come to our brother. There is definitely a problem in the black community when we have issues with one another and we are going to the very same people who present a much bigger issue to bring about resolution. The more genuine act to have done was to present that to me and said, my brother, this bothers me, this worries me, and this is what I found, and how would you like to proceed with this, before you had done that. Now, I'm not saying that because there's any guilt associated with it, because I'm not saying that because there's any guilt associated with it, because I know every single image that I used in here, and I'm enunciating it on camera for the author you heard, because it's his fault that he entered into public domain. It's public domain, which i.e. is free use.
All right, now, hold up, Jabari.
All right. I watched the presentation that yourself and your husband gave from your YouTube channel, and I was very impressed at the delivery. I was also very impressed at the way that you...
English, right?
Absolutely. I can tell when she spoke. And being that I'm akin to that order of operation from a Hebrew perspective, I automatically fell in love, not with your wife, but with
brother. I mean,
I don't know her enough yet to love her, but I really fell in love with the way that she showed her skill set in how she approached, the way that she carved out her ideas before that crowd. I was really moved by it. And I was starting to say it off camera, but it wound up off camera. And I really wanted it to be off camera because I don't perform for the camera. I'm a genuine person. I am on the inside and the outside. So I want to say this to you in a very genuine moment, that I really appreciate what you're doing in the community. We can have a difference of opinion, but that's never going to trump the fact that I look at you as my sister. I want to also look at you and say this. We have been disagreeing all night, but I assure you, we're going to disagree more. But I assure you, that should never trump what we have as brothers.
Absolutely.
Because that door should always be open, because at some point I may be able to learn. But it's beautiful what I have to say. At some point, if we keep that door open, there's something that you have that I may learn.
Yeah.
And I honestly feel that if we keep that door open to be reciprocal, that I have something that you may learn from that can only cause us to grow.
No. I want to be. I need to be very clear that I think that there's a lot that that you have in your studies that I need to learn, and I'll honestly say to you that preparing for a meeting with you, I read some things I hadn't read in a long time, and so that was enjoyable. But let me say to you that in terms of cordiality, I want to be clear that when I looked at the presentations you did with other debaters, the fact that you always maintained your decorum and your familial contact to people you were disagreeing with endeared me to you before I knew you were my Guyanese brother. So, let's be really clear that this is not a situation where I have any angst towards you whatsoever, none whatsoever. I think that some of the concepts that you are putting forward are dangerous. Okay. That's why we're having a fraught conversation. And I think that it's possible that I might be able to convince you on some of those topics. And so if I didn't think I could convince you at all, then I probably wouldn't sit down with you. So that's really important. I want to address really quickly what you said about how I behaved in terms of the things that I saw in your book. And I want to be very clear that I know you said that it was agent-like. And I want to be an agent infiltrates, provocates, and then reports back. Yes. And I did none of those things. What I did was I looked at a publicly available book that I'm assuming is sold very well, that is a companion to a lecture that actually was viewed by many people. Yes. And in doing that, you knew very well that I was going to be looking at your book for things that I thought were impeachable. That's what a debate is. And so in doing that, I don't want you to think that I was being an agent. In fact, and I said this a few moments ago, when I contacted the person and asked if they had given permission for anyone to print it in a book, and they said no, the first thing they said was, "Can you tell me where it was?" And I said, "Let me finish. Let me finish. Let me finish. Please let me finish. Please let me finish." And I said to them, because I want the family to hear this, I said, "I'm not going to tell you where I saw it. In fact," and this is what I said, "I might even be mistaken." I know I wasn't mistaken, but I might be mistaken. So I'm going to speak to the person first, and perhaps I will get back to you. He asked for my contact information. I did not share it. And so I want you to be clear that what I was doing was I wanted to be sure that if I was going to challenge you on something, I had grounds to do that. And so that is what I did. Honestly, I'm going to say to you as someone who, I've only written one book. It's scholarly. I've only written one book. But I want to be very clear to you that for 30 plus years, I have read scholarly text. That's what I do. I'm the guy on the train that doesn't read magazines or novels. I read text. I actually was a master of research at Cornell University. Cornell has 28 libraries. I actually would do research for graduate students because I understand how this is done. And so when I say to you with love that this is not how you do it, I'm not saying because I'm an authority. I'm saying it because I'm in the trenches like you. And I know that if you continue on this path, there's going to be a problem with it. Now, did I seek to impeach you with that information? Absolutely. Because you were actually, in many ways, saying things I thought were disturbing about our people. And so that is why I brought it up. Now, I'm going to say in closing, because we have very few moments, that I've enjoyed speaking to you. We need to really make sure that the audience understands that this is only part one. This is only part one. You haven't even seen our presentations yet. And you had better understand that if you didn't look at this whole video and you missed the other video, then you've missed out on a dialogue for the ages. And so I'm going to turn things back over to my brother and tell him that I'm really looking forward to our future discussion.
Thank you very much. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to elect to use the last 120 seconds, because I'll stay an additional 2 minutes, right? I'm going to use the last 2 minutes to say this. I'm not going to use my last 2 minutes to counter anything you said. What I'm going to use my last 2 minutes to do is to invite the family to the next sit down. You're going to want to come and see what this brother has to present. And to my community, you're definitely going to want to come to see me defend the ideals that we hold dear to our hearts. A lot of us like to think that we are the beginning and the end of truth, when in fact none of us are. None of us hold a copyright on truth. Right? None of us hold that. When we come together in dialogue, the ultimate idea is that there is no one person that has it all. We're all growing from each other. We're all learning. Some people have more. This is a fact. This is the fact that I may come to learn from him. This is the fact that he may come to learn from me. But nonetheless, we definitely have something to grow. And even in a person losing a dialogue, genuine thinkers understand that that's still not a loss. You gained, right? So that's how I want to close out the night. I thank you for opening up your home to me. I thank you for allowing me to meet you in person, which I really do respect what you're doing, irrespective of our differences. I thank your wife also for opening your home to me. I thank you dearly. I thank Black News 102 and Sarnetta for always being the outlet.
Drop real quick for August 13th.
And August 13th, you do not want to miss it. August 13th is the unity after it's all said and done. We've watched in the last 3 to 4 years tops that the zenith or apex of this community and debates and dialogues has been rampant in the community. We've watched it going nowhere. Now the call from the elders to my age and younger and the babes is what's next. I've heard people in the community say that they're Garveyites. My community are certainly Garveyites. I reminded the viewing audience just tonight that on Sunday we had the opportunity to sit down with Dr. Julian Garvey, Marcus Garvey's son. And he spoke about his father's relationship to the Hebrew Israelite community. When we talk about unity and what's next, I want to talk about that Garvey unity. I want to talk about that unity that was able to surpass all of the differences and bring us together under the idea that we still have a common enemy. And reminding us and understanding that we have a common enemy, we're also still behind enemy lines. Don't envision that Kansas is behind us. Don't envision that New Jerusalem is behind us. Don't envision that ancient Kemet is behind us. And by behind us, I mean, I'm speaking to the facade in this room that we're in right now. We are still behind enemy lines right here. Dialogues like this is necessary because ultimately, I believe We have to center God consciousness if we're going to grow and go anywhere. So dialogues like this is necessary, but we still need to be able to come in a room and not hate.
Right.
That's what I want.
Absolutely.
Unity. That's the unity I want to see. August 13th.
So we got past the book. We ain't going back into the book.
That's
We're going
not
to
true.
get into...
That's not true.
I don't mind. I don't mind.
Because
let him do it,
the issues that we're going to be discussing are in the book.
Let them do it. Yeah,
All
that's
right,
fine.
time we
I
out.
mean,
We done.